အားလုံးပဲမင်္ဂလာပါကျမနာမည်ကတော့ Mimi ခန့်လို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်ကျမဟာလက်ရှိ Stanford တက္ကသိုလ်မှာနိုင်ငံတကာ policy ရေးရာနဲ့ master ဘွဲ့တက်နေတဲ့အကြောင်းသူတစ်ယောက်ပဲဖြစ်ပါတယ်ကျမဒီနေ့Michael Beer Nonviolence International နဲ့ director ဖြစ်တဲ့ Michael Beer နဲ့တွေ့ဆုံမေးမြန်းမှုလေးတစ်ခုကိုပြုလုပ်ထားပါတယ်ဒီတွေ့ဆုံမေးမြန်းမှုရဲ့ရည်ရွယ်ချက်ကတော့ဒီကမ္ဘာရဲ့ထဲမှာရှိတဲ့အကြမ်းမဖက်မှုလှုပ်ရှားမှုတွေကနေအောင်မြင်ခဲ့တဲ့အကြောင်းအရာတွေကိုအားလုံးကိုသိစေချင်လို့ပဲဖြစ်ပါတယ်ဒီတခုရှင်းလင်းပြီးပြောချင်တာကတော့ဒီဗီဒီယိုကမြန်မာပြည်မှာအကြမ်းမဖက်လှုပ်ရှားမှုကိုဘယ်လိုလုပ်ရမလဲဘယ်လိုသွားရမလဲဘယ်လိုအောင်မြင်မယ်ဆိုတာမျိုးပြောချင်တဲ့တွေ့ဆုံမေးမြန်းမှုမျိုးမဟုတ်ပါဘူးအဓိကပြောချင်တာကတော့တခြားနေရာတွေမှာဘယ်လိုရှိခဲ့တယ်အကြမ်းမဖက်ပဲလှုပ်ရှားမှုတွေကတော့ဘယ်လိုရှိတယ်ဆိုတာကိုgeneral ပေါ့နော်ဒီရေဘူးရအနေနဲ့ပြောပြတာတွေကိုနားထောင်ပြီးတော့ကိုယ်နဲ့သက်ဆိုင်တဲ့ကိုယ်နဲ့လိုက်ဖက်မဲ့ view ဟာတွေကိုဆွဲထုတ်နိုင်ဖို့အတွက်ရည်ရွယ်ခြင်းဖြစ်ပါတယ် Michael Beer ကလည်းပြင်ပကပညာရှင်တစ်ယောက်ဖြစ်တဲ့အတွက်မြန်မာပြည်သူအကြမ်းမဖက်တဲ့လှုပ်ရှားမှုနဲ့သက်ဆိုင်တဲ့သူသိသွားတဲ့အကြောင်းအရာတွေပဲပြောပြသွားမှာပါဒီကနေပြီးတော့ကိုယ်နဲ့သက်ဆိုင်မယ်ဆိုယူကိုယ်နဲ့မသက်ဆိုင်ဘူးဆိုပယ်ထုတ်ပြီးတော့ညီမတို့ရဲ့လှုပ်ရှားမှုကိုတဆင့်တိုးတက်နိုင်မယ်လို့မျှော်လင့်ခြင်းအပြင်ဒီဗီဒီယိုကိုထုတ်ပြရခြင်းဖြစ်ပါတယ်ဗီဒီယိုကိုတော့အင်္ဂလိပ်လိုပဲအဓိကလုပ်သွားပါမယ်အားလုံးမြန်မာလိုကြည့်ရင်တော့စာတန်းတို့တွေကနေကြည့်ပြီးတော့လေ့လာနိုင်မယ်လို့မျှော်လင့်ပါတယ်ရှင် Hi everyone, my name is Mimi Kent. I am currently a student for international policy at Stanford University. Today I'm doing an interview with Michael Beer. Michael Beer is a director at Nonviolence International. He has done trainings on nonviolence mass action around the world in multiple countries and multiple places. And he has an expertise in nonviolence mass action. And this video, just for a disclaimer, this video is not a direct advice and not to provide answer, but rather to lay out different options so that you can brainstorm on these options and think about more strategy and come up with ideas to incorporate in our current resistance movement, if you may. Many of these options will probably be not relevant or useful for Myanmar, but if it gives you an idea, if it gives you something to think about and something to take away to incorporate in the current movement, that will be a great use of your time and ours as well. So if you have questions about this, please send us the questions so that we can take them into account in our next interviews as well. And with that, I'm going to start asking questions to Michael. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Mimi. Thank you for having me. And I'm really thrilled to talk to people in Burma.
Hi, so my first question is, how do we even win through nonviolence mass action? And especially when the military regime is cracking down on the protester with so much violence.
People power can win. And in fact, people power wins more often than armed struggle. And the people of Burma, unlike many other countries now, are really united. You can see that in the election that just happened in November, when the National League for Democracy won 83% of the seats. So you have 54 million people. You also have millions of people around the world and many governments supporting you. And you can win, but winning, of course, has different meanings for different people. And so part of your job is to try to build even more unity among all of the people of Burma about what your vision is for Burma in 10 or 20 years. Some of you may wish for a Burma at peace and with democracy and lots of economic success. That's going to take time. So one of the things you have to figure out in your movement is phasing your goals. What is your goal going to be first, your first win, and then your second win and your third win? And how are you going to phase those? And those decisions are up to you. I can tell you that you are already winning. I got involved with Burma back in 1990. and your country was an economic disaster. It was under military rule, and people were living a very difficult life overwhelmingly. Since 1990, your country has come a long way, and it's through struggle, enormous struggle on the part of the people. Even if you're carrying the military on your back, you have created so much advancement in 30 years despite that difficulty. So your vision is the dominant vision, and you can win this fight. And there could be many ways that you win, but if you have the vision that everybody wants, you will succeed. I would say more specifically, you also have to ask yourselves, what are the realistic scenarios in the near term for change? One scenario is the military might surrender. This is unlikely. Another possibility is the military might split. Yes, they have not had a history of splitting very much, but the military is made up of people, just like every other institution on the planet. People fight. We all know that there are conflicts within the military everywhere and in Burma. There are the hardliners right now who want more crackdown. There are members of the military that don't want the coup. We know a lot of them voted for the NLD. So its split is a possibility. Another scenario might be that they request to do negotiations with the NLD and the CRPH. Another scenario might be they just return to their barracks. Ultimately, it's going to take pressure on them to make the costs high for them, to pressure them to change in a good way. And you need to figure out which of these scenarios or another scenario that's likely to work for you.
Thank you, Michael. Another question that I had is we have this current civil disobedience movement that is currently gaining momentum, and that is people are getting trying to get people from all across ministry to join the CDM movement. And what are your thoughts about the CDM? And is it currently the strategy? Is the strategy working? Are there any success stories that people can take inspiration for the CDM? And obviously, the military is using guns and real bullets and mass arrests, and firing civil servants, etc. So what can we do? What can we do for the CDM to succeed? Like, what are the other parallels and examples that we can take inspiration from?
I think the CDM is quite inspirational, and the massive support for it has been quite impactful. It really has put the military and security forces on their heels, kind of not knowing how to respond for a number of weeks. The CDM has been primarily led by doctors and nurses, as you know well, and other professionals in the banking sector and in the civil service. This has had quite a strong impact, clearly. It is a challenge to maintain this, but you also are making it very difficult for the military. Generally speaking, you want to have a two-handed strategy, a two-handed strategy if you're doing some sort of resistance to stop a coup. One strategy is to strike, refuse to go to work, and have these ministries and economy to some degree not work, so that the coup plotters, the mafia that has taken over your country, cannot get anything done. The other way of doing this is to stay in these positions and try to take over these government offices, these village administration positions, as much as you possibly can. And if you're in there and you get orders that you don't like, to disobey those orders or to work slowly and make it difficult for those orders to carry out, but to try to maintain your strength within these institutions. So the one hand, you can do strikes, you can leave work, even creating your own parallel government with these striking civil servants and leaders, or the existing offices and government, you try to take over them as much as you can and resist inside as much as you can. These are the two hands. I don't know which balance of these hands is correct at this time for you, but these are the two big potentials for you: striking with parallel government and institutions, and taking over the existing government and institutions as much as you can and contesting the mafia for those positions. With regards to your questions about military using guns and bullets, that's what militaries do. And we can see that that is their strength, but it's also their weakness, because that's all they can really do, is to threaten and kill. And what your job is you don't want to fight them on their turf. If you try to throw bombs at them or shoot them or kill them or hurt them, they're going to win every time because they have the modern weaponry and the training, and many of them are young men. So you need to change the battlefield, and the battlefield is the battlefield of the narrative, the story, the vision of your country, and the hearts and minds of the people, and even of the security forces themselves. They've killed, tragically, quite a few people, and yet they have the capacity to kill thousands, but they're afraid to. They're afraid to kill thousands. They killed thousands perhaps in 1988, and their reputation has been terrible ever since. And they know that the Burmese people don't trust them. So and we know that they've used massive violence, killing by the hundreds and thousands in the ethnic minority areas. It's possible they may kill thousands in the cities of Burma. We hope not. And there are things that you can do and that you're already doing under your great leadership, street leadership that you have now, to avoid direct confrontations at times, and trying to limit people's suffering and sacrifice through the various actions that you've been taking. There are some things that you can do that have been done in other countries that you can consider. Nonviolent discipline can work. It's very difficult for military to kill enormous numbers of people if they're being very nonviolent. Another thing that can work is filling up the jails and welcoming mass arrest if that's what the authorities try to do. The universities the prisons can become universities and colleges and can make very strong activists. It's not something nobody wants to do. It's a terrible experience. It's great sacrifice, but we've seen many struggles where the people are not afraid of mass arrest. And given the fact that your judiciary system has become stronger in recent years, it's still controlled by military now, but there may be an opportunity for you to fight in the court system, in the judicial system, and make it difficult for the military, and fight for the survival of your judiciary, which you want to have in your country. If you want a democratic country, you want a judiciary that really supports human rights. Other ways that you can reduce and limit the violence is, generally speaking, during the daytime is going to reduce violence more than nighttime. Another thing that can reduce the police and military violence is reducing the social distance. And again, this sounds very scary, and it is. But we know that the army and the police like to shoot people from a long distance away. They're trained to do that. But it's much more difficult for them to do that when they're close up, and when you can talk to them, and when you can appeal to them. And when you can reduce the social distance between the people and the army and let them know that you are their cousins and you're their children and your brothers and sisters, and that you are one people, and continue to appeal to them, this can reduce the violence. Finally, you want to maximize participation. And unfortunately, if you start getting into these street battles with the police and with the military, it generally means that you're only going to have young men in the streets. And that's not maximizing your potential. The military is generally limited to just young men, but you have 54, 53 million people, young, old, women, from all classes, all ethnic groups. You can use very, very large numbers. And the large numbers are really valuable to succeed. So don't fight on the battleground that the military wants you to fight on, which is to do street battles with young men. Keep your nonviolent discipline, keep reducing the social distance with the military and the police. And those are a few things. And I'll have many more suggestions that you can think about doing in later discussions.
So Michael, all of these topics that you brought up are really interesting. And my question is that, I mean, as we know, the Myanmar military is quite barbaric and they're inhumane, and they have, if you see the violence on the street right now, it seems that, I mean, we have declared them the terrorist group and they are acting like terrorists. It seems like they have no human in them whatsoever. So things like you were talking about, getting so close to them and it would be hard for them to shoot. I'm wondering, I'm just a little pushing back on that idea whether it will actually work. And another question that we have.
It might not work. It might not.
Okay. Another question that I had is also among the youth. We have sort of like thinking of what about self-defense? What about the police are trying to grab us and arrest, and they're trying to, they're about to shoot, and then we do something to just defend ourselves. What about self-defense? Is there a way to incorporate self-defense into nonviolence resistance?
The important thing to think of is the goal. And many of you are nonviolent soldiers, and you're willing to sacrifice your bodies, you sacrifice yourselves. Many of you are Buddhist or Christian or Muslim and know the importance of suffering in your religious lives and how that's an essential part of the human experience. Nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to sacrifice in these situations. But self-defense, if it means attacking and harming another Burmese person, even if they're a soldier who's acting like a terrorist or a police person, is not the kind of Burma that you want to have. If you're going to have to achieve some sort of democracy in Burma by killing or hurting other Burmese people, this is going to be very difficult to achieve your goal of a united, peaceful, democratic Burma. So it's very tempting to want to lash out. Anger is certainly appropriate, understandable reaction that you have, but you should not be controlled by your feelings. You should operate from a true self inside about what is correct for you. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to protect yourself. This is your choice on how you want to proceed, and you should try to protect yourself and your families and your communities. My suggestion to you is to always keep the higher goals in mind. And we're not going to achieve in many countries a peace and democracy if it means that we have to kill and hurt our fellow citizens. And so what we know from recent struggles, the most recent I can point to that encourage you to study about is the Sudan, which is the most recent success in the world with a brutal dictator of 30 years. The people were unbelievably disciplined with nonviolence and did not fight back when the military shot them with bullets. And they kept nonviolent discipline, and they succeeded. I cannot guarantee you success with a nonviolent struggle or a violent struggle or anything else. You have to make those decisions. But the important thing to do is to keep your goals in mind, and nonviolent discipline has shown itself to be more successful than kind of defending yourself with self-defense. Let me just say finally that many of the people in Burma are not young men, and your ability to defend yourself with your fists or with objects against the young men in the military is not terribly realistic. And so you have to fight with your mind, with your soul, with your voice, and with the good strategy and good tactics to work together with large numbers of people in order to achieve the goal. I hope that's helpful. I can't answer your question exactly what to do, but I can tell you what has worked elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Those are all really important topics and tactics that you've discussed. Sort of for the conclusion, just kind of like given the big picture and big strategy to win, like do you have any sort of thoughts on what might be the different strategy to win in this fight against and the struggle against this dictatorship?
I will finish with just today, with just one area to focus on, but we have many other options and opportunities for the movement to grow and become more powerful, in my view, as an outsider. I could be wrong. One area is that you have great strength and can grow on is that you can really recognize the great strength of Burmese culture now in the prominence of women. One of the reasons you have this coup is because of the sexism of the military. They are envious and jealous that the leader of the Burmese nation is a woman. This is humiliating for them. We also know that some of the very first street activists that started the protests were young women. Burma has a strong tradition of powerful women. And one of the ways for a modern Burma and Myanmar to succeed is for men to look at their sexism and their male supremacist ideas and to support women in taking leadership at all levels of your society. We know that eventually, when you get peace and democracy in Burma, in a federal, presumably Burma, that the world is a competitive place. And those societies that use all of the brains of all of the people, not just half the people, but use all of the brains of all of the people, are going to be the societies that are the most successful. And so it's crucially important that you consider the idea of supporting women to take an even stronger, more leading role at all levels, in the streets, in the political parties, in the organizations, and in the culture, and in the arts, and in the humanities, and the spokespeople. You can gain tremendous ground because remember, half of Myanmar is women and girls. That's 27 million. And the military doesn't have anything. So that I would just conclude with just one possible area where you could strengthen your movement if you chose to do that.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for your thoughts and just sharing us your ideas and thoughts for this discussion. Hopefully, this discussion will be a thought-provoking one to those who are devising strategies on the ground, those who are devising a vision for our country to how to move forward, and think about more discussions, or think about pushing back on this discussion as well if you choose to do so. The main idea of this whole discussion is, if in order for you to brainstorm, in order for us as a society to think through how to move forward. So with that, I'm ending this discussion for today. Please let us know if you have questions or if you have topics that you want us to touch us on in the future discussion. Thank you very much.